In Conversation with Terry Shepard, award-winning broadcaster, narrator, and author. A deep dive into the writer's craft with the artists and support systems who create the stories we love.
She's covered crime scenes from Missouri to Miami, written for some of the nation's top newspapers, and turned one of California's darkest true stories into her first book. But after years of living inside real-life tragedies, Clare Boothe decided to invent her own crimes, and she hasn't looked back. Her Hank Worth mystery series has become a favorite among readers who crave both grit and heart, blending the beauty of the Ozarks with the shadows that lurk there. In her seventh Hank Worth novel, Throwing Shadows, our favorite sheriff finds himself entangled in a murder investigation near the infamous Murder Rocks, where Civil War legends of stolen gold collide with very modern secrets, and where danger is as close as family. Clare Boothe, welcome to the conversation.
Thanks, Terry. It's great to be here.
Murder Rocks is a real place with its own rich history. What made you choose that location for Hank Worth number 7?
There really was no resisting Murder Rocks, which is actually what it's called. And as soon as I found out that existed, I knew that I would eventually have to set a book there. It was a friend of my mother-in-law's who tipped me off to it, and I filed it away a couple of books ago, and this was the appropriate book to dust it off and create my own problems around the real history.
Tell us more about the history of Murder Rocks.
South of Branson, Missouri, in the Ozarks, is a group of huge boulders that happen to be right along a wagon trail that in the Civil War era led from down in Arkansas up north toward Springfield, which was and still is the big city there in that part of Missouri. And folks would be fleeing the war and battles going in both directions, depending on where your loyalties lie. And there were groups of bushwhackers who would hide amongst these boulders and ambush people. And they'd rob them. Sometimes they would kill them. And so it became very infamous as a very dangerous place as you'd go along on the wagon trail.
And it still exists today, but it's privately held. It's not just easy to get to. You got to get permission to go there. Is that how it works?
In real life, yes. Yes, it is privately held. It has been for a long time. And the last I heard, the owner was actually working with government agencies to turn it into something that had public access, whether it's a park or an easement or that kind of thing, because people are very interested in going and seeing it. In my book, I switch that up a little bit and turn it into where the actual boulders are on public land. They're part of not a park, but like a county forest area with private land abutting it. I thought that would work a little bit better than getting too close to reality and an actual homeowner who actually owns those boulders. So I went in a slightly fictionalized direction. So the boulders are real, but in the book, they are located a little bit differently.
This is your 7th outing with Hank. How has his character evolved during the course of the series?
Oh, that's been the most fun, actually, is putting him through all kinds of things and seeing him grow and the other characters grow. He has definitely become more comfortable in his position as sheriff. He originally was chosen for it on a fluke. He just moved down to Branson and applied for just a deputy job because he'd been a police detective up in Kansas City. And the actual sheriff had just left the position. The county commission took a look at him as some big, shiny, big city cop and appointed him to fill the vacancy. So suddenly he was in charge of a budget and a staff and all sorts of things that he had no experience and no interest in handling. So he's grown into that much more throughout the books, where he's more comfortable doing those kinds of things and waging the budget battles and managing people and that kind of thing. That's been fun to evolve him in that way. then also his family. His kids are getting older. They're still very young. I made them young to start with deliberately. I thought that would be a fun and a more unusual family situation to give him. And very small children, 2 and 4. The whole family has had growing pains in that way. And then in book 6, I really threw a monkey wrench in everything, which was lots of fun. That really sent everybody spinning in a very bad direction. He and his wife in book 7 in Current Shadows are in the midst of some serious marital problems. So that was very different for their dynamic. And so for me, that was fun to write because it was so different.
How did you so effectively balance the tension between Hank's professional and private life?
Oh, that's a good question. Part of it, I think, just to take the nuts and bolts of writing, going back and forth in the plot, that you don't want to concentrate on the murder investigation the whole time. And so you bring in the other conflicts, which in book 7 is the problems that he's having with his wife and his father-in-law who they live with. So the family in this book takes a bigger role than it has in some other books. That was a little bit more of a balancing act. They were almost joint plots instead of being a plot and a subplot, working with that and making sure that was always balanced instead of tipping the scale too far in one direction or the other.
Claire Booth is our guest. We're talking about her 7th outing with Sheriff Hank Worth, Throwing Shadows, available now. ClaireBooth.com is her website. How has your writing evolved over the course of the series?
I would say some things are definitely easier. I find it much easier to make things up now. When I first started, it was very hard for me to actually sit and make things up, since I, in my previous life, was a reporter. And that, of course, that was what you never, ever did, was make things up. It's definitely easier on my end. And so I hope that it's more smooth on the reader's end.
Tell me about your creative process. How do you get a book from start to finish?
I file things away, like with this, the existence of Murder Rocks, and I will put that in the back of my head as I'm working on either other projects or book 4 or 5 or whatever book I had been on when I learned about Murder Rocks, and just tuck it away and let it sit and incubate until I need it. And I got to sitting down for book 7 and saying, okay, what plot is going to work to further the character arcs? And so I knew where I had left my characters after book 6, which was the marital problems and the family problems and all of that. And so I needed a mystery plot that was going to work in service of those character arcs. And so I dusted off Murder Rocks and started in with that. And I was like, okay, this is going to work. This will work too. To give me a good mystery and then also be able to carry on the character arcs that I had going.
One of the risks that comes with a series is the necessity for readers, in many cases, to have read the earlier books. But in your series, that's not a requirement.
Thank you. I know, because I do try that, because we've all picked up a series and been like, I don't know what the hell's going on. So that is definitely one of my goals, that you could pick up any book and you'll have a mystery that is very satisfying, that I give you the conclusion to. I'm not going to leave you hanging on the outcome of the main mystery investigation. But then also, in service of the series, that you're going to have growth and change with the characters that is consistent throughout, that you're not going to go from book to book saying that sounds like a completely different character than they did in the last book. No, you want everything to be consistent and And for me, the growth and the change and that those arcs were important to continue, but keeping in mind that it is a discrete story and you finish it up at the end.
Throwing Shadows is the book, written by our special guest, Claire Booth. Her website is ClaireBooth, ClaireBooth.com. What's the hardest thing about writing?
That is a very good question. What comes next? I am a pantser. I don't plot. I have tried outlining, and it is just not something that I can do. So there is a lot of, okay, what direction do I take this in next? But once I make that choice, then I'm usually okay. But there certainly are days where you got to go for a walk, or you got to take some time and mull things through a little bit more before you come up with what's going to go on the page next.
Do your characters ever take over the story?
So actually in book 3, I created a character, and he was a city police detective, whereas Hank is with the county. And he was great. I really liked him, but he served his purpose in book 3. I put him away. I moved on my merry way. And I got about halfway through book 5, and he showed up, and he never left. He spent the whole rest of the book as a key character again, which was never something that I had intended on doing. Because they just do something that I was unaware that I had thought of. And so that is a wonderful thing for me when it happens.
You started out writing true crime with The False Prophet, and then made the switch to fiction. Was it hard to pivot?
It was. Just in terms of retraining my brain from being completely always factual and accurate and never making things up, to the switch of making everything up, like I did with the Murder Rocks location, right? You shift it a little bit so that it fits the story, which obviously you never did in journalism. So that was the hardest part. The writing itself, that was old hat, but the switch to making things up was very difficult.
You're a West Coast resident, and yet your stories take place almost half a continent away in Branson, Missouri. How did you do your research about Branson?
My husband's family is from there. And so if I'm unable to get back there, which especially during that stretch with the pandemic and everybody was trapped at home, I do then have those resources. At that point, my mother-in-law was very helpful and would go out and literally smell the flowers for me and in places and tell me things that you can't figure out online. How they smell or look or feel. And she was always a wonderful help.
Was there any unexpected feedback you received while creating the Hank Worth series?
Well, it is amazing how many people I've met who've been to Branson. That so much has not been surprising because it is such a huge tourist town. But the number of people who have actual connection to that area, either relatives who are from there, or there's one other writer I know whose parents have a timeshare there, just all sorts of little connections just based on the setting and where it is. So that has been a lot of fun.
Why do you write?
I am not happy if I'm not. I'm not completely me, I think, if I'm not writing something, whether it's journalism or these novels, a standalone, whatever it is. I need to be writing something.
What's the hardest part?
Finding the time, shoehorning the time in, then looking at it through the other half of the looking glass. That if I don't, then I'm unhappy. So it's okay. We'll find the time and make it work.
Throwing Shadows plays with the idea that old sins throw long shadows. Can you talk about that theme and how it threads through the story?
I fell in love with that saying, again, a long time ago, and I tucked it away. And I thought it was perfect for this particular book because more than any of the other Hank books, this one is about history as opposed to just the character's history or something like that. This is real history. And so I thought it was very appropriate and very easy to incorporate when you consider those bushwhackers who would ambush people. And that was 160 some years ago, right? And people still want to go see this place and talk about this place and talk about some of these men by name, these highwaymen, robbers, and, what they did, their sins, right? Throwing such long shadows. And then when you take my characters and some of the events that happened in book 6 that caused this family rift had taken place in the past. And so those sins were also throwing shadows in this book. So that was the intent, was both respects.
Clare Boothe is our special guest. We're talking about book number 7 in the Hank Worth series, Throwing Shadows. You can learn more about Clare at clarebooth.com. How many more Hank Worth stories do you have in your head?
At least several more. I certainly don't have an exact number because, again, I don't plot ahead, but definitely some more. There are some more places that I want to take Hank and the other characters. So we'll see where that is. But yeah, definitely a couple more to come.
What do you hope people will take away from their encounter with Throwing Shadows?
I hope that, for one thing, they learn a little bit about the history of that area. I had never really given it any thought. You read about the Civil War and it's all Virginia, or it's all the campaign down in Mississippi and those battlefields and everything. But it was brutal in the Ozarks, but it was like hand-to-hand brutal and starvation brutal and lawlessness to give rise to these guys that would lay in wait and kill people. And to learn a little bit about maybe an overlooked part of the Civil War, I would love for people to take some of that away. And then also how hard it can be to do your job and care for your family at the same time, when sometimes those have completely opposite outcomes and you know that, and you've got to choose. Considering that as a thought-provoking measure.
What are you reading now?
I am reading an absolutely delightful series by Ashley Weber, and they are the Electra McDonald mysteries. And they're much more cozy-ish and actually historical. Now that I think about it, they're set in London during the Blitz. And she is a thief, essentially. She was raised in a family of thieves, and she's a safe-cracking expert, and she gets recruited by military intelligence to help in the war effort. And no, they're just lots of fun, and there's a little romance and jokes, and they're just really delightful. And then the next one, the next one is a 180, I guess, as Sean Cosby's new one, King of Ashes. So I will go in a very different direction with his work, which is not cozy, but I'm really looking forward to that one.
It is said that we all have a book in us. How would you encourage somebody who has never told a story that they ought to write one?
You definitely should, because yes, if you think you do have a book, then you probably do. The first thing, honestly, I would read whatever genre you think you want to write in. Just immerse yourself in it, because you need to get a feel for the rhythms of it and the patterns and how it works. It works differently for sci-fi world building than it does for at least procedurals, right? So just immerse yourself, but do it with a notebook or your phone or whatever you want to take notes on, and write down your favorite things about that book. And then as you learn a little bit more, you're reading a little bit more critically, why were those your favorite things? Why did they work so well? Why was that particular thing what you remember out of that book?
The book is Throwing Shadows, available wherever cool books are sold, and you can learn more about our guest at Claire Booth, ClaireBooth.com. Claire, thanks for the conversation.
Oh, thank you, Terry. It's always just wonderful to talk to you.
In Conversation with Terry Shepard is a copyrighted presentation. All rights reserved. I'm Lisa Davis. Join Terry Shepard next time in Conversation.